So Deandre Ayton's really good, and now he's going to be on the Phoenix Suns, and I expect that he's going to be the number one option for them. Maybe not this season because, well, Devin Booker's got like 3 years on him, but if we fast forward a couple of years, I think Ayton could end up surpassing Devin Booker for his offensive value, because the dude's going to be so dominant finishing around the basket that it could just be overwhelming for other teams. I mean, there's a decent amount of bigs in the NBA who won't be able to handle him simply because he's too big and strong. Then when you get to the centers who actually can stand toe-to-toe with him, how many of those guys are actually going to be good enough defensively to deal with Ayton's athleticism rolling to the rim, his athleticism in transition, and then all of his post moves, right? Whether it be turnaround jumpers, hook shots, spin moves, drop steps, up and under moves, whatever the hell else you want to think of. The guy really is the total package offensively as a big man, right? I expect Phoenix to run the majority of their offense through him, and it should be pretty good stuff. You take into account his abilities on the boards as well, and how he's going to grab a solid, 3 to 5 offensive rebounds a game, probably. A few tip-in plays here and there, catching just the occasional dump-off pass from a Devin Booker or any other perimeter player for Phoenix. The guy's going to score a lot of points, right? Next thing I want to talk about is the Devin Booker and Deandre Ayton pick and roll, or pick and pop sometimes. This could be pretty difficult to defend because, one, Booker's playmaking has improved, even as his teammates have really not been that good. Ayton is going to give him some assists, definitely. But also, how do you defend those two? Because Booker can shoot, he can pull up, and he can also just finish at the basket, right? So you can't go under the screen on him, and you can't just kind of like favor Deandre Ayton too much for the sake of not allowing yourself to get dunked on. But then if that's the case, what do? Do you switch that? Because if you switch that, then Deandre Ayton's going to have an easy post-up opportunity. But you also can't leave Ayton open just on the perimeter through trapping Devin Booker, right? Because Ayton seems like he's going to be able to actually shoot threes, maybe not day one. And I would expect that that's the thing that you dare him to do anyway. But still, if you do decide to switch, then Booker's going to have an easy ISO. Ayton's going to be able to post up. But, you can't just leave either one of them too open either because of Booker's offensive abilities. And then if Ayton gets that jump shot down, it's going to be tricky. Also want to make note, the spacing should be pretty good. They acquire Mikal Bridges. He can hit from outside. Josh Jackson, that one's a little bit more of a question on whether he's going to give Ayton the space to really post up. Brandon Knight, if he ends up being their go-to point guard, he's not bad. And then, of course, you got Booker, who's a knockdown shooter. So I think the spacing can be pretty decent for these guys. And then Deandre Ayton can be on the low block, doing stuff, running plays with Devin Booker, force the defense to make a decision on those two. And if the spacing is not terrible around them, well, then the Phoenix Suns could be a pretty tough cover. Some other things we can address now, just outside of Booker and Ayton, I guess, is just the team overall, as well as some potential fears. You go to the defense first with Deandre Ayton. Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to get at least okay from there, because when you're a bad defensive center, and there's some rumors that he could end up being not too good on that side of the floor, then there's a limit on how good you can really be as a team, right? But you hope that with his physical profile, that his job could just be a little easier. He's such a strong dude that if he simply just stands there, then perimeter defenders will bounce off of him and they won't be able to finish through him. So that's a positive thing. He's tall, and it seems like he moves relatively well, so he could maybe be an okay rim protector just by default. I'm not expecting this dude to become a defensive wizard, but with how good he's going to be on offense, if he can just simply be not bad on defense, I think you'll take it. But it would also make sense for Phoenix to use the rest of the roster to help out Ayton defensively, right? Now you got Josh Jackson, who Maybe playing some 3, might be playing some power forward. I think he's got some potential on defense. I do think he was better towards the end of the season, definitely on offense, but I'd like to think his defense was a little bit better as the year went along. Dragan Bender, he is pretty well known. That's what everybody talks about with him, is his ability to defend a few positions. His problem is he's just, he's effectively a 16-year-old. So the chances of him being physically ready, even now into his NBA career, still might not be totally there, but he has improved. It was his second season where he proved to be like an actual NBA player, which is good. That could help out Deandre Ayton. They, of course, acquire Mikal Bridges, who seems like he can be a good perimeter defender, coming out of Villanova, switchy guy and all that. So there's potential, definitely, for you to help out Ayton, and then hopefully Ayton can just get to a point of being not bad on defense, and then with how good of an offensive team these guys are probably going to be, that can hopefully be enough. There is a bit of a logjam brewing, though, for these guys. For one, you got TJ Warren, who they they might not need him anymore, because this previous season they needed him because if it wasn't going to be for him, then they would just have no offense at all outside of Devin Booker, right? Well, now you're probably going to have 2 20-plus point scorers, so you're not going to need Warren's isolations and mid-range and cutting stuff as much, right? It would probably make more sense for you to have someone like Mikal Bridges, a defender, a shooter, and a guy who can, have his moments with the ball in his hands, but for the most part just play off of the 2 stars, right? If Josh Jackson's three-point shot could be a thing, then he could play off of those 2 as well. Hopefully he can just be like a cutter and that sort of thing, but I do have some fear that we could see some moments where Josh Jackson's defender doesn't totally care about him, and as a result, DeAndre Ayton might have a double team on him, or the Ayton-Booker pick and roll could be messed up a little bit because they're just ignoring Josh Jackson. But then again, he's not a bad ball handler, so he could go off the dribble and do stuff. Still, I do think it's a little bit of a fear. I don't know if this team really needs a point guard at this point. I mean, I know I highlighted Brandon Knight earlier, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in this team's future, given that he's not a perfect fit off the ball, and he's not totally great with the ball. But they did also draft Eli Okubo, I want to say his name is, and he could end up being the point guard next to Devin Booker. I don't know. He's 6'3". He's a very good shooter, and he does have some good finishing abilities, and he's a decent enough jumper, and he also has some defensive potential, but he's got to be really locked in, and there's a chance that his handle may be just slightly not good enough to really play point guard, and maybe he's not a natural enough point where his decision making isn't always totally there, combined with the fact that his athleticism is good but not great, and he might be this guy who's not good enough to really play more than 20-something minutes a game. I don't know. I don't know what the ideal point guard would be for this team, whether Devin Booker is going to go to another level in terms of having the ball in his hands all the time, even if there's a decent point next to him. I mean, if it's between Elfrid Payton and Tyler Ulis and Brandon Knight, then yeah, I'd rather Devin Booker just have the ball. But if you were to acquire a better point guard, maybe a different story, I don't know. So I think what I'm getting at is this roster is not complete. There's still a decent amount of questions out there, but when you have a top 2 now that can both put up over 40 points a game, or combined, you know what I mean, that's a damn good starting point. I like Mikal Bridges, I like Josh Jackson, I like Bender, but I also think TJ Warren, Marquise Chris, maybe those guys are on the way out in the future. I think Brandon Knight could also be in that category as well. But still, let's focus on the positives from an offensive standpoint. Ayton and Booker should be really good. And yeah, there's still some questions to answer, but what is the biggest thing when it comes to being a good team? You need that top-end talent, and it seems like Phoenix now has the top-end talent, and that's a good thing.